Alright, Diablo 4 players, let's go over Season 8's best Mythic uniques, as well as a tier list for the Mythic uniques as the game stands right now. So for starters, I just want to mention that certain classes may benefit off of one Mythic unique more than another, and for that reason you may want to prioritize choosing one Mythic over the other if you want to start to craft these. Now these, just as a heads up, are going to be utilizing the leaderboards on the pit pushing. That's what we're using as our metric to determine which one is the best. We are actually going worldwide, checking out builds from across the globe, seeing which ones are the highest ranks and which ones that you definitely want to lock in. So for starters, I'll also explain why you want these Mythic uniques. So it is kind of class dependent, and I say kind of class dependent because certain classes just can't equip them. This is in a different language, but the Ring of the Starless Skies is going to be in the Barbarian build. So if you are interested in playing the Barbarian, that's the only real Mythic unique that you kind of want to look out for this season, as a lot of the other builds have a unique helmet that you can slot in as well. However, I do have to give an honorable mention. If you are interested in playing the Throw Barbarian, the Grandfather is an excellent choice. But the only real one that we're using here is the Starless Skies because, well, it just gives you another multiplier. This is a very good item for a lot of different builds, but it really comes down to just giving us just the raw stats here. There isn't really any special thing that we need, as the Ancients themselves, because the rank 1 Barbarian build currently is the pet variant. The Starless Skies just gives you, again, multipliers. The resource cost reduction does technically help out for a lot of different builds, but that's not the main reason why we run it. It's simply due to, right now, as far as the rank 1 Barbarian build, that's the only Mythic that you actually play. Now moving on to the Sorc. What is the best Mythic unique for the Sorc? You can see there is a Ring of the Starless Skies right here in the rank 1 push build, and then there's also the Harlequin Crest. The thing is with the Harlequin, you definitely want to get that greater affix on cooldown reduction. It makes a pretty big difference. Plus, giving your character that amount of armor is huge with the max life and damage reduction. I would say overall, if I was to craft a Mythic unique, depending on the class you're playing, like I said, if you're playing Barb, you only got one real option unless you're playing a Throw Barbarian. The Throw Barbarian build is technically 10 pit tiers behind, which is a significant amount of DPS, like in terms of like the difference here. But as far as Sorc goes, I would definitely say the Harlequin Crest as the main priority, just because, well, you may need to craft more than one, you may need to get multiple. If you really want that greater affix on specifically that cooldown, it's going to take, multiple tries. Your chances are 1 in 4 in getting it. It is a pretty big difference between having it and not having it, on top of getting the masterwork done for it. So if you're playing Sorc, I would say in terms of Mythics, this is kind of like your amazing one that's going to give you a big power spike, because the Sorc in Diablo 4 is heavily tied to cooldown reduction, but that would be the priority for the Sorc. So basically these two, but Harlequin definitely first. Now moving on to Rogue, this is where it gets a little bit interesting. So if you are playing Rogue in Season 8, the best Mythic unique for you to actually craft earlier on is once again going to be Harlequin Crest. The reason why you want to actually craft the Harlequin isn't necessarily just because of cooldown. You actually do want maximum resource as the Rogue, because the more resources you have, you want to reach that threshold with the Banished Swords Talisman. If you guys haven't seen that build, it is all about Death Trap. There's a Death Trap Rogue build. I do also have a guide that I just recently uploaded on it, so feel free to check that out if you want to play Rogue. But the Harlequin Crest is mainly used for that maximum resource, as you want to try to hit this number of 275 to get 100% overpower. The additional ranks of all skills is great too, because it gives you extra cooldown on your ultimate, as well as just, again, cooldown reduction in general is always good. But it also gives you a massive amount of armor, and because the Rogue build this season relies on so many unique items, you need to get armor somewhere, so this kind of helps out for the Rogue. So as far as it goes, Rogue can actually use several Mythics here. But I would say the main priority, once again, is going to be Harlequin Crest. The Starless Skies is technically kind of optional. There's a lot of builds that are actually opting out of it once you min-max to a certain point, because the Ring of the Starless Skies, you don't need the bonus of the resources, because, well, you don't spend your resources in the sense of like a normal build. But how it works is you spend all of it due to the Banished Lords and Beastfall Boots combo. But it does technically give you ranks to core skills, so it's not bad on the rogue by any means. But at the higher levels, when you want to convert to close quarters combat, if you want to do that variant, you may want additional cooldown reduction, and then you can run Air of Perdition in the helmet slot once you have godly, and I mean absolutely godly pieces of gear. Air of Perdition can override the Harlequin because it just simply has a bigger multiplier, because you have that 60x on top of giving you core skills, which also counts Death Trap, and it also gives you critical strike chance, so it kind of facilitates an extra multiplier if you want to change one of your boss powers. But for the most part on the rogue, I would prioritize still, for most people in the very beginning and even throughout most of the life cycle, unless you're a top 1%er, Harlequin Crest is going to be better in most situations. Air of Perdition, if you have absolutely triple Masterwork critted gear, and on top of that, multiple greater affixes on Beastfall Boots, you could still reach a lot of the thresholds. But I would say in this order of, for sure, Harlequin, and then Star Skies is great as well. But I would actually opt for the second choice to be the Doombringer. So why Doombringer in the build for the Rogue? Well, as far as Rogue goes, the Doombringer gives you a massive amount of life percent, and that is huge. Plus the all stats is great. Getting damage reduction is also great. And you could up to get more damage if you want to. You can run another multiplier on the stun grenades, because the stun grenades boost up your death trap as well. But it's really coming down to giving you a huge amount of survivability, so highly recommend to consider Doombringer specifically for the Rogue. Even though I put it in the A tier here, it's because there's only one class. This is a general tier list here, because the only class that's getting really great use out of this is going to be the Rogue. But I would say it's probably like the second best choice, like 100% Harlequin for 99% of players, and then Doombringer's pretty solid. Then the other ones, if you want to, you could consider Starless Skies or Air of Perdition. Again, Air of Perdition is only for people that have like the godliest pieces of gear, and you don't run the Shroud of False Death. Again, we're just mainly talking about the top tier builds here. Next up, though, we do have the Druid. So the Druid can actually get away without running this, but this is the Shroud of False Death. This is the only mythic that you would be playing on the Druid class, and the reason why as well, it gives you just a bunch of damage. It's because it gives you that bonus of +1 to all passives, which is actually pretty big to get all these bonuses, extra duration, and everything just kind of slowly adds up. And this has been one of the best mythic uniques for a very long time, but it's only seeing play right now really on the Druid, because there's a lot of other uniques, and with the Sorc now playing Riment, as well as the Rogue playing currently one of the brand new uniques for the chess piece, it just kind of is lost its top tier potential, because you're forced to play those other things to get the speed or getting the groups up for the build. But Shroud of False Death is still excellent in a lot of different builds. It's still going to be considered an S tier one, because it is so dang powerful in being able to give you that +1 to all of your passives. So if you are playing Druid, technically this, you only got really one choice, because your ring slots, well, they're kind of clogged here because you're playing Cataclysm, and you need the Monarch ring, as well as Inexhaustible Will here, which is the ring that gives you a massive amount of ultimate cooldown reduction. So you really don't have too many choices, because Druid has been in this place where you have to run some sort of Tempest Roar or the other helmet that gives you the Werebear as your main, and it's kind of unfortunate. Plus the new unique that Druid got this season also covers the helm slot, so they don't really have too many options. So if you are playing Druid, you only really got one option here. I could say maybe for some builds, if you're not playing meta, you can consider it. But if we're looking at the top tier list, we're going to obviously be looking at the meta here. Next up, I got to go to the Spiritborn. So the Spiritborn actually uses the most amount of mythics for most builds this season. And that is going to be the Air of Perdition, the Shroud of False Death, as well as the Starless Skies. So this will facilitate giving you extra resource cost reduction where it actually kind of matters a little bit. And the Spiritborn is been in a situation where it's consistently Quill Volley for many seasons here. Air of Perdition just gives you a massive amount of bonuses. You get that lucky hit chance, and then obviously the Shroud of False Death being super good for all the passives. Now, you could definitely get away with Loyalty's Mantle. It's still like a pretty good item as far as it goes, but for the most part, it's not like one of these makes the build come up online, where some builds, like I said with Rogue, you need that 275 to really feel that big power spike, and that extra energy really helps out. But again, as far as the Spiritborn goes, which one would I recommend crafting first? I would say Lucky Hit Chance is kind of important, so either one of these is great to facilitate for the build, but Shroud of False Death is also just a really nice quality of life because getting a massive amount of HP is good. You also get resource gen. Honestly, with this, there's not one that I would say is like super priority, but I really personally like Ring of the Star of the Skies just because the resource cost reduction can help out. In the earlier stages, it depends on like, again, what stage you're at as far as leveling goes, but I really like the resource cost reduction in the earlier stages for this build. However, next up though, it's going to be kind of similar. We have the Necromancer. So one thing I want to know with the Necromancer, I know it's in another language, but it's the same exact items. It's the Star of the Skies and the Shroud of False Death that we're talking about. And the reason why you don't run a special helmet here is you need the Deathless Visage. I believe that is the name of the unique over here. Just gives you a bunch of ranks to Bone Spirit. Look at that, plus 19. It's just so crazy for that reason, and it also gives you like another bonus. But what we're really here for is the Shroud of False Death and the Starless Skies. Now, the Starless Skies doesn't give you like so much resource cost reduction to the point where it matters, and the reason why is because in the build for the Necromancer, you actually play Soul Rift. So Soul Rift will give you your resources, so it's not like a big deal, but you can get a massive amount of crit with this as well. That's one thing that's kind of nice for Starless Skies. You get the crit and you get a massive amount of attack speed. Both of those stats are really key for a lot of builds just to go ahead and masterwork. And then again, Shroud of False Death giving you max life because this build does revolve around overpower. So this is why I kind of consider this as like in the S tier, because majority of builds, this is kind of your go-to in the helm slot. And then to go ahead and mention the other ones, and I'll briefly mention why the rest of them kind of suck. Again, I know I didn't show off the build. Technically, there is a Throw Barbarian build, and you would want to lock in the Grandfather. It's a great addition to the build just because it has a lot of great stats. This item over here, it seems super good, right? Where it gets to have this huge amount of the properties on it, and then you get a massive amount of life, you get a massive amount of crit as well. Really great for that. But the thing is that there's just better options, and again, the top tier builds don't play it because, well, you simply don't need it. The aspects are very important for the multipliers, for the Pet Barbarian build. And then for the C tier, I did put Tyreals here. So pretty much the top tier ones are going to be Harlequin, Air of Perdition, Star of the Sky, Shroud of False Death. And then if you are playing Rogue, this one is, in a lot of builds, it's pretty much like in 80% of builds they'll play it. If you are playing Close Quarters, you could get a little bit more damage depending on the rolls and certain things. If you do happen to not want to play Doombringer, but these are pretty much in like the S and the A tier. Again, B tier here is the Grandfather because it still is kind of usable in the build for if you want to play the Throw Barbarian. Now, I wanted to throw the Tyreals armor over here because I don't think the item is like terrible, like in terms of like what it does. It gives you a massive amount of survivability. So if you're having problems with survivability earlier on, and you happen to, let's say, get this, or you really want to craft it, I'd probably stay away from even crafting this at all. And the reason why is because, well, it's simply not going to be really good at the end game, and because these sparks are just kind of hard for a lot of players to obtain, especially because they've changed the way that the system works for the boss rotation. You can't just do rota runs, you kind of have to use your own mats. I would just say tough it out and then eventually craft one of the good ones that I'm mentioning. But Tyreals is still okay because it does facilitate a huge amount of survivability that you wouldn't get with anything else. If you want survivability, this is your absolute like go-to. Even though I'm putting it in the C tier, it does have its use. And Tyreals, I mean, it does open up another build. It's not very good right now. It just kind of fell off when they started changing off all the stat numbers. The problem is that you have this chance to apply this like poison when you can just apply the boss power poison or any other variant. It's just going to be overall much better. And again, the helmet slot is so competitive with two of the helmets, Air of Perdition and Harlequin, being just so top tier right now that it's hard to kind of replace it. But you do get a massive amount of attack speed, which is actually quite nice if you want to play some sort of off-meta stuff. I still think Tyreals is still like kind of usable. It makes a build out of an item, whereas the rest of the items, they're almost not even worth mentioning. But these are like the F tier where like if you get these, it's just a disappointment, man. You get this, it's an instant, you gotta salvage it, man. There is no builds with any of these items, sadly. These items, Blizzard, please buff them, man. The only time that like any of these items actually saw any play, this item, it wasn't bugged, it was just like it gave Barbarian immortality for a brief moment in Season 0, and then after that, no one has ever played this in an endgame, like, top tier build, sadly. So hopefully we'll see some buffs to the other items, and if you're wondering why do these items suck, it really comes down to not being able to have a two-hander with the aspect, because there are certain classes where, like, well, if you're running a two-hander, that gives you double the stats of the aspect that you imprint on it, and the stats just simply don't line up. It just needs to go crazy with the number. So if they want to add a couple zeros to it, maybe people consider it. Melted Arcelic is like ultimate defensive, like amulet, but you can't really make great use out of it, other than getting a massive amount of movement speed that you could get if you are maybe leveling up like a second or third character. Having extra movement speed is not going to be like terrible, but overall I think that there's just way better options than Selig at the moment. I think this item is due for like some sort of a rework on the block, but the Spear of Lycander, having this chance to grant a shrine, it's just simply not good, because the shrines, well, they're just not as good. I remember for a long time when you would get the effect of getting the shrine for the conduit, it would make your character like so much worse. But it gives you a bunch of resistances, which I mean, you really don't need. Movement speed, the percent of all stats is kind of cool to scale, but again, losing out on a two-handed aspect is just too much. And even Shattered Vow with dot builds, you wouldn't want to play it, because you would lose out on, there's another aspect that gives you more damage based on the amount of like different crowd controls the enemy's affected by. It's a pretty big thing to lose out on. I mean, you do get pretty nice additive, like it sounds great, right? 444 damage over time, especially if you get GA. It also gives you Berserking, which is a stat that like you normally can't get. But overall, again, these items here are just not even really worth mentioning, because there are 0 builds at the top tier that are using any of them at the moment. But if there's some sort of crazy bug or interaction later down the line, maybe that these could be used. But other than that, there really isn't any good use out of these. So basically, that's going to wrap up the tier list and the video, and we went over every single class of like which ones you may want to start crafting first. But that is going to be the builds as far as like kind of what's in the meta for the Mythic uniques. So hopefully this video and guide helped you guys out. I also want to mention there's another video I just recently dropped the other day that goes over how to get the Mythic. So if you want to know how to acquire some of these Mythic items, I have it, and it's got all the timestamps ready for you. So if you want to like learn how you can actually craft it, different ways that you can acquire these sparks, feel free to go ahead and check out that video, as it is kind of related to this one. Anyways, that's going to wrap up the video. If you guys enjoyed it, drop a like on it. If you're new here, hit subscribe to the bell if you guys want to see more, and I'll catch you, Diablo gamers, in the next video. Peace out.